The northern wind whipped violently through the empty streets of Boston, carrying a cold sharp as a blade. The first snowfall of the season descended without warning, coating the city in a thin silver layer that made everything blurred and numb. Victoria Reynolds pulled the collar of her worn-out coat close, but the soaked fabric offered no warmth at all. She had just finished an 11-hour shift at the small diner near the Longfellow Bridge. Her legs felt as though they no longer belonged to her body, and her hands still carried the faint smell of grease from dozens of plates she had carried. Once again, Victoria had missed the last bus, something that always happened when the diner was too crowded and she was too kind-hearted to refuse extra hours. The 2-mile walk back to her room on Lowell Street under the November sleet was a familiar torment, but tonight was colder than usual. Much colder. Cold enough that her teeth chattered uncontrollably. Just a few more blocks. Then everything will be fine, Victoria whispered to herself, though even her own words were swept away by the wind. A taxi rushed through a puddle nearby, splashing icy mud across her pant leg. Victoria took a deep breath, too exhausted to be annoyed. The kind of exhaustion that made her feel as if her heart too were weighed down by the storm. And then, a pale, cold beam of light swept across the street behind her. Headlights from a sleek black SUV crawled slowly along her path. The engine purred so quietly it was almost inaudible, the kind of car only the extremely wealthy drove. Victoria felt every fine hair on her neck rise. She had lived long enough to know that expensive cars appearing on deserted, stormy nights rarely meant anything good. The SUV slowed, glided beside her, then stopped. The rear window lowered very slowly, very smoothly, like a movement programmed with perfect precision. A low voice emerged, cutting through the sound of the rain, as though even the wind paused to listen. "It's getting colder. You won't be fine if you keep walking." Victoria froze. It was a man's voice, deep, warm, measured, confident, so much so that every word felt wrapped in velvet. The kind of voice that made anyone turn around without thinking, and she did too. Inside the dimness of the car, she could only make out the outline of broad shoulders and a pair of eyes dark as obsidian. His face wasn't fully visible, but that gaze, calm, sharp, and filled with something like compassion, held her in place. Victoria swallowed. "No, I'm fine. I don't take rides from strangers." The man smiled lightly, so subtle that if she hadn't been looking closely, she would have missed it. A smile like that didn't belong to an ordinary person. A good rule, he said, his voice drifting like wind. But tonight isn't the night to follow it. The SUV remained still. The soft interior light illuminated part of his face, a clean, angular jawline, a straight nose, a kind of beauty that wasn't loud but dangerous, refined, magnetic, and the kind that made people feel he could decide their fate with a single word. Victoria stepped back half a step on instinct. The rain cut into her skin like needles. The wind struck harder. Every cell in her body trembled from cold exhaustion and an unnamed fear. The man tilted his head, observing her. That gaze, it wasn't the look of someone trying to intimidate or lure her. It was the look of someone standing before something he had known for a long time. "Where are you headed?" Victoria bit her lip. She could lie, but for some reason she didn't. Lowell Street, near the old park. The SUV fell silent for a moment. Then the man spoke. "That's on my way." "No, absolutely not. No one driving a car like this had any reason to pass through that rundown block." It was clearly untrue, yet he said it in a tone that allowed no doubt. Victoria took another step back. "Thank you." But I think thunder exploded overhead, shaking the pavement. Sleet poured down harder. Within seconds, Victoria felt her entire body numb. Her vision blurred. She wasn't sure if it was the rain or pure exhaustion. His voice came again, deep and precise. "You're shivering, and you have a fever." Victoria's eyes widened. How did he know she had a fever? Before she could respond, the man extended his hand, not touching her, merely offering it into the space between them. "I'm Owen." A beat passed. A strange silence, as if his name was something she had heard before, but couldn't quite place. Owen Parker. The name fell into the rain like a quiet blow to her chest. Where had she heard that surname on the news? In someone's story, in a conversation she barely remembered. The uncertainty coiled inside her like a wisp of smoke. The car door swung open this time, not by him, but by the driver in front. Warm yellow light spilled from the cabin, cutting through the storm. Victoria looked at that glow, then at the man in the car. The frigid wind cut across her neck, triggering a cough. And in that exact moment, she saw Owen's eyes sharpen a tiny shift, but lethal in its precision. As if her single cough had struck something deep within him. "Get in," he said. No pressure, no pleading, just a gentle command, yet absolute. Victoria clenched her teeth, her heart pounding painfully fast. She knew she shouldn't, but her legs were trembling from the cold. And Owen Parker's eyes, they were strange. He didn't look at her like a stranger. He looked at her as though he had been waiting for her for a very long time. Victoria drew a deep breath, letting the icy air cut through her lungs. Then she stepped toward the SUV. One step, that changed her entire life. As she placed a hand on the door, Owen spoke the final sentence of that night, a sentence that froze her to her core, and not because of the weather. "Good. Let's go home." Home. She had never said she had no family. She had never said where she lived. She had never. The door shut. A soft, decisive sound like the end of a chapter. The SUV surged forward through the storm. And Victoria Reynolds, for the first time in her life, felt she had no idea what she was walking into. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. I preserved the emotional tone, drama, romance tension, and refined style while keeping all imagery and nuance intact. Victoria couldn't remember the exact moment she slipped into darkness inside the SUV. Only the unexpected warmth of the leather seat, the quiet hum of an engine breathing like a sleeping beast, and Owen's obsidian eyes so deep she felt herself falling. Then everything disappeared. When she opened her eyes, she was staring at a vaulted ceiling, carved with intricate patterns, sharp and detailed enough to belong in an old museum. A soft, fragrant sandalwood mingled with bergamot perfumed the warm air. Victoria blinked several times, trying to make sense of her surroundings. The mattress beneath her was so soft, she felt as though her body were sinking into a cloud. A cream-colored silk blanket draped lightly over her, warming her cold, aching skin like a gentle hand. She jolted upright. Immediately dizziness swept over her, tilting the room. She braced herself against the mattress, steadying her breath. Her body felt heavy, as if it had been dragged through a storm. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, as though mixed with sand and cold wind. The room was enormous. Across from her stood floor-to-ceiling windows, draped with deep blue velvet curtains. Morning light streamed through a narrow gap, soft and cool like a brushstroke. Beside the bed sat a small table with a glass of water and 2 white pills. A handwritten note was placed neatly beneath the glass. "For the fever. Take when awake." The handwriting was bold, precise, firm. It didn't need a signature. Victoria knew exactly who wrote it. Her breath stalled. Memories rushed back in a flood. The storm, the black SUV, the open door. That calm voice. "Let's go home." Victoria's heart pounded. Before she could gather herself, there came 2 gentle knocks on the door. She stiffened. The door opened slowly. A woman in her 50s stepped inside, wearing an elegant ash-gray maid uniform. Her hair was pinned neatly, her eyes gentle yet inscrutable. "Good morning, Miss Reynolds?" Victoria's eyes widened. "Why? You know my name?" The woman gave her a soft, composed smile. "Mr. Parker instructed us to take good care of you. You had a high fever all night. The private doctor came twice." Victoria froze. Owen brought her here. Owen called a doctor. Owen wrote the note. Everything revolved around his name. The woman approached and set a tray of food on the bedside table. A bowl of warm oatmeal, a steaming cup of ginger tea, and a clean, damp cloth. "You should eat a bit to regain strength. Your body is exhausted." Victoria swallowed a tight wave of unease. "Can you Tell me where I am, the Parker residence in Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill, the wealthiest part of Boston and home only to families who controlled finance or politics. Victoria felt her skin prickle. Why did he bring me here? The question was like a thin blade, sharp even to her own ears. The woman paused, not lying, but not revealing the truth either. He only wanted to make sure you were safe. Safe from what Victoria tried to sound calm, but her words trembled in the air. The housekeeper looked at her with a strange, quiet sympathy Victoria couldn't decipher. There are things you don't know yet, Miss Reynolds, and Mr. Parker will explain them when you're strong enough. The vagueness made her stomach sink. Something too big, too unclear was closing in around her, as if she had walked through a door she hadn't meant to and now could not walk back out. After finishing the oatmeal and taking the medicine, Victoria felt her breathing steady. She decided to stand. The room was so luxurious it felt unreal. The oak floor gleamed enough to reflect her feet. Velvet armchairs, Italian crystal chandeliers, oil paintings lining the wall. Everything belonged to a world she had never touched. A set of neatly folded clothes lay on the chair, cream trousers and a storm blue turtleneck, all perfectly her size. Victoria frowned. That wasn't coincidence, not remotely. She changed, then took a deep breath and opened the door. The hallway stretched long with deep blue carpeting lined with antique paintings and soft golden sconces. It was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. She had walked only a few steps when a man's voice echoed from the far end. You shouldn't go too far. A man's voice, gentle, but like a needle tapping lightly on skin. Victoria turned. A tall man leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed. A perfectly tailored black suit framed his broad shoulders. His face was sharp, his gaze cold as steel. He gave her a slight nod. I'm Marcus, Chief of Security. Victoria inhaled slowly. Where is Owen? Your employer? Marcus tilted his head. His gaze swept over her as if reading her thoughts in one glance. Mr. Parker is in a meeting, but he asked me to make sure you don't leave this floor until you're well. I'm not a prisoner. Her voice was sharp and trembling. Marcus didn't smile, but his lips moved faintly as if assessing her. No, you're not. But you are someone Mr. Parker cares about very much. He emphasized very with a peculiar tone that chilled her spine. Please return to your room, Miss Reynolds. He will see you soon. And if I don't want to? Marcus straightened. His answer slid out easily, emotionless, like discussing the weather. Then I'll still have to bring you back. The way he said bring didn't sound like dragging her or forcing her, yet clearly didn't mean persuading her. Victoria clenched her fists. Marcus stepped aside, giving her a wide path, but his eyes stayed on her back until she re-entered the room. 10 minutes later, the door opened. She didn't need to look to know who had entered. The atmosphere itself shifted, thickening into something deeper, heavier. Owen Parker walked in with a presence only men accustomed to power carried. A long black coat, a flawless suit. His head lowered slightly, but his eyes sharp enough to stop her breath. She stood across from him, feeling unguarded, unsure how to shield herself from the force of his presence. Owen watched her for a few long seconds before speaking. His voice was low, soft, yet enough to send a tremor through her. You look better now. She lifted her gaze. Now she wasn't used to the familiarity of the word. His lips curved slightly, deliberately ambiguous. Victoria, he corrected himself, voice dropping to something gentler. You made me worry all night. Her heartbeat stuttered not because of the words, but because of the look in his eyes as he said them, as though he was looking at her, longer than necessary. Why did you bring me here? She attempted to keep her voice steady. Owen didn't answer immediately. He walked toward the window and drew the curtain aside. Light flooded in, outlining the strong angles of his face so striking, she involuntarily curled her fingers. At last, he said, because last night you were in the wrong place. At the most dangerous moment. What does that mean? Owen turned toward her, his gaze darkening. Victoria, you have no idea what you walked into. She swallowed, confused. Walked into... What? Owen stepped closer. The space between them shrank to mere inches. His eyes held hers deep and intense enough to make her feel she was standing on the edge of something enormous and dangerous. He lowered his voice slow and foreboding between two forces. And you never knew you belonged to one of them. Victoria felt the floor tilt beneath her. Owen didn't look away. His eyes sharpened, yet behind them flickered a sorrow she couldn't name. And last night he murmured, when you stepped into that rain, you became the center of it all. In his voice, Victoria heard something else. He had known her before. Not a coincidence. Not a passing encounter. But as though she had always been within his orbit. Even if she had never realized it. Owen's words hung in the vast room light as a breath yet heavy as something dropped from a cliff. Victoria stood frozen the cold from the wooden floor, seeping up through her feet until she wanted to step back, yet her legs wouldn't move. What he had just said, you belong to one of two forces, felt like he had pushed open a door she never knew existed. She pressed her lips together, trying to piece herself back together. You're telling me I'm involved in some kind of conflict? Owen didn't answer immediately. He walked toward the table, set his leather gloves down with slow, deliberate movements. Morning light crossed his broad shoulders, casting a sharp, elongated shadow across the floor. Not involved, Owen said at last. You're the center of it, Victoria. His voice was deep, steady, and so calm it made her heartbeat stumble. Victoria drew in a long breath. Why? Who am I to be the center of anything? This time, Owen lifted his gaze to hers. The sharpness in his eyes softened not into gentleness, but into something like recollection or regret. Because of the name you carry. Victoria frowned. I'm a Reynolds. There's nothing special about that. Unless... Owen walked toward her slow, measured steps, yet each one pressed the air around her tighter against her lungs. Reynolds, he repeated, voice like a low note resonating. Your name used to be very special, Victoria. What do you mean? He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she felt the warmth of his breath brush her temple every time he spoke. Reynolds is the name you were given, but not the name you were born with. Victoria stared at him. That's impossible. I've been Reynolds since childhood. On every document, every record, every... Owen shook his head, gently, eyes cutting through the fog of her memories. There are things that don't appear on public records. Victoria felt her heart stutter painfully. What are you implying? You're not a Reynolds, Owen said softly. You're a Winterfield. The room seemed to freeze. The wind outside stilled at the glass. Even the light dimmed for a fraction of a second. Victoria stepped back half a pace. Winter. What Winterfield? Owen pronounced each syllable like a key unlocking a door sealed for years. A family that held power over New England long before the Parker name ever existed. Victoria couldn't speak at first. Her heartbeat slammed loudly, each breath coming shorter. No, she whispered, almost pleading. I don't know any Winterfield. My mother never... You think your mother told you the truth? Owen asked suddenly, not harshly. Just with a sorrow so strange, she faltered. Some secrets are kept out of protection. And guilt. Victoria felt her chest tighten until it hurt. Then what about my father? Who is he? Someone from this powerful family you're talking about. Owen's gaze sharpened like a blade catching light. Your father's real name was Adam Winterfield, the sole heir of that bloodline. He said it gently, but each word froze her spine. And he disappeared from the underworld more than 20 years ago. Victoria went cold from head to toe. My father died. He died when I was a child. He disappeared, Owen corrected quietly. And the death, you were told, was a staged story. Victoria stood motionless. Her mind struggled to assemble the fragmented pieces from her past, the years her mother avoided speaking of her father as... The missing photographs, the stories that always trailed off before ending. Why? Her voice trembled. Why would my mother lie? Owen stepped forward, not touching her yet. His presence folded the room tighter around them. To protect you, he murmured, and to cut all ties to a past that could have killed you both. Victoria clenched her hands until her nails dug in. But why is everything coming back now? Why me? Why now? Owen held her gaze, eyes dark as night. Because the faction opposing the Parker family discovered you're alive. And they believe you're my weakness. Victoria let out a dry, humorless laugh. Weakness? We didn't even know each other before last night. A strange glint flickered in Owen's eyes so fast, she wondered if she imagined it. Is that what you think? He asked slowly. Victoria's breath caught. I don't understand. Owen stepped even closer. His control, his restraint, his fire all collided in the look he gave her. Victoria, I've known about you long before that storm. The air vanished. You were watching me. Her voice was barely a whisper. Protecting Owen corrected. From a distance, without letting you know. Why? The word slipped out like a feather, but hit the floor with the weight of iron. Owen didn't look away. His gaze locked onto hers, fierce, restrained, and unyielding. Because you're a Winterfield, he said quietly, and because there are things surrounding you that you don't even realize you're touching. What things? Owen didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached into his suit and pulled out a thin black envelope. He held it out to her. Victoria stared at it like it was something that might explode. What's inside? The first explanation. Owen's voice dropped to a near whisper. The reason your father vanished. The reason he changed his name. The reason you were hidden. Victoria hesitated, then took the envelope. The paper was cold under her fingertips, like it carried an entire buried past. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph, old, faded, frayed at the edges. A young man stood in the shadow of an alley in New York. Sharp eyes, a beautiful but tormented face, and on his left wrist, a tattoo of an ornate ring, the same tattoo her mother always tried to hide in the few surviving photos of her father. Victoria's heart twisted violently. This is... Owen nodded once. Your father. Before he disappeared. Victoria almost dropped the photo. The man didn't look like someone who abandoned his family. In his eyes, she saw fear and something fiercely determined, as though he was running from the entire world. Why do you have this? She whispered. Owen looked at her deep, unguarded. Because I was the last person to see him, before he left everything behind. Victoria felt the ground fall away beneath her. She looked up at Owen, a stranger, and yet terrifyingly familiar. In his eyes, she saw something that wasn't just duty or obligation. A flicker, a feeling, unclear, but strong enough to make her pulse jump. Victoria, Owen said, voice low and steady, you didn't enter this world by accident. You are the last of the Winterfields, and the people who want to bring me down want you. For what to use you, Owen answered. As leverage, a pawn, a lure, whatever suits their purpose. Victoria swallowed painfully. I'm not an object. No. Owen said, his voice darkening. You're not, because you're standing here, and I'm standing right in front of you. The space between them was so close she could feel his warm breath brushing the edge of her lips. A dangerous moment, a breath suspended, a spark hovering over a pool of oil. Then Owen whispered, and I won't let anyone lay a hand on you. Silence stretched for several long seconds. The words Owen had spoken, whether a promise or a warning, echoed through Victoria's mind like a voice reverberating in a vast chamber. She took a small step back, barely noticeable, but enough to loosen the invisible thread that had been pulled taut between them. Why do you think I need protection? Victoria asked, her voice no longer trembling, but sharper, steadier. I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not... You're not ordinary. Owen cut in his tone low, but absolute. Victoria tightened her hold on the photograph of her father. I don't want to be part of whatever world you belong to. Owen watched her for a long moment. His gaze didn't dominate or threaten. He looked at her as though she were something fragile he was afraid to touch, afraid to break. You have been part of it since the day you were born, Victoria, he said quietly. That doesn't change just because you want it to. She didn't answer. Part of her wanted to scream to reject everything he was saying. But another part, the part that had always sensed her mother hiding something, knew Owen wasn't lying. It felt as if she had been running her entire life from something she didn't even know existed. And now it had found her. Victoria turned away, swallowing the heavy knot rising in her throat. She walked toward the window, staring out into the expansive garden below. Snow coated every branch, drowning the landscape in a serene, muffled stillness. But beneath that tranquility, she sensed unease. "You said there's another faction?" she said, still facing the window. "Who are they?" Owen slowly approached, stopping behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, but still keeping the respectful distance of one breath. "The Maranzanos," he answered. "A family out of New York. And they believe you're my weakness." Victoria turned sharply, startled. "But why? You and I only just met." Owen paused. When he looked at her again, his gaze cut through her like a soft blade. "There are things you don't remember, Victoria. And there are people in this world who know more than you think." A chill ran down her spine. Owen continued, "They know you're Adam Winterfield's daughter, and to them, you're the key to challenging my position." Victoria shook her head. "I'm worth nothing to anyone." "You're wrong," Owen said, his voice gentle but razor-edged. "Your worth isn't in what you do. It's in what you carry. A bloodline both sides want." Victoria stepped back. Everything he said felt like it was pulling her deeper into a dark spiral. She forced herself to grab onto something, anything. "Why would they want me? What do they think I can do?" Owen's gaze deepened into something bottomless. "They think they can use you to make me kneel." His lips curved slightly cold, in a way that didn't seem human. But they miscalculated. Victoria shivered, not from fear of Owen, but from the truth behind his voice. A truth both terrifying and inexplicably safe. But before she could make sense of it, a loud thud echoed somewhere in the mansion. The sound was sharp enough that Victoria jolted back. Owen turned instantly. His eyes flashed sharp as a blade drawn in one swift motion. "Marcus?" he barked. The door swung open almost at once. Marcus stepped in, face composed but alert. "West Wing alarm," Marcus reported. The system detected an intrusion. Victoria's heartbeat lurched painfully. "Someone found this place," Owen said under his breath, hands tightening into fists. Marcus nodded. "We're locking down the area." Victoria looked between the two men, breath unsteady. "What's happening, Victoria?" Owen turned back to her, his gaze suddenly unnervingly gentle. "You cannot leave this room, no matter what happens. What do you expect me to do? Just stand here." "Yes." Owen's voice was firm as steel. "You stand here, you wait for me, I don't." Last step, Owen leaned in his voice, dropping one step outside this room. "And I lose you." The words knocked the air from her lungs, not because of their meaning, but because of the way he said them, like he'd just admitted something deeper than the danger surrounding them. Marcus approached, touching the communicator in his ear. "They've reached the back courtyard." Owen turned toward the door, but paused. He placed a hand on Victoria's shoulder, light as a breath barely there. "You're safe when you're close to me," he said, "and in the greatest danger when you're not." His eyes held hers for a long, unblinking moment. Then he left the door closing behind him with a finality that felt like a blade. Victoria stood still long after they were gone. Her heart pounded against her ribs as if trying to speak for her, say what she couldn't. Slowly, she walked to the window, parted the curtain, and looked out. Snow blanketed the rooftops and the cobblestone paths. But beneath the quiet sheen, Victoria saw dark figures moving swiftly across the garden shadows, slipping between branches and stone. She inhaled slowly, forcing her breath to stay steady. The Maranzanos, Owen, her father, Winterfield. Each word spun through her mind like shards of glass, bright, sharp, impossible to hold. A faint sound echoed behind her. Victoria spun around. The bathroom door was open just barely, but she was certain it had been closed before. "Is someone in there?" Her throat tightened. She stepped forward cautiously, each step light but heavy with dread. "Hello." Her voice was quiet but clear. No answer. She took a step back, intending to turn away when there it was again. A sound, soft, like a foot brushing tile. Victoria gripped the door handle, slowly pushing it open. Warm steam drifted out, but the room was pitch dark. A cold shiver crawled up her spine. She reached for the switch. The light flicked on. No one. But someone had drawn on the mirror. Not with a pen, not with lipstick, but with a wet fingertip. A symbol. A circle slashed diagonally through the center. Victoria felt her blood freeze. That symbol. She had seen it before, in her father's photograph. Drawn faintly on the wall behind him, blurred but unmistakable. She turned, breath fractured. Someone had been here. Not Owen's men, not anyone trying to protect her. Someone who left the Winterfield mark. A message, or a warning. Victoria stood motionless. The world Owen spoke of was no longer waiting outside the door. It had walked straight into her room. The symbol on the mirror still glistened with beads of water each trembling stroke, like the spiral of a secret that had just awakened. Victoria stared at it without blinking, her heartbeat stumbling violently inside her chest. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, tracing the diagonal line across the circle, icy damp, and sending an unexpected shiver through her. She had seen this symbol before, in her father's photograph, in the shadowed, sorrow-laden eyes of a man she didn't remember, yet felt as if she had known long ago. Someone had been in the room, someone who knew exactly who she was, and they weren't on Owen's side. Victoria backed out of the bathroom, shutting the door on instinct. She pressed her back against it, trying, but failing to steady her breathing. Fear surged through her veins, not only because of the intruder, but because of the things Owen still hadn't told her. The bedroom door burst open. Victoria turned sharply. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't the maid. It was Owen. He entered like a storm barely restrained. Snow dusted his coat, and the cold radiating from hands seemed to shift the air in the room. His gaze swept across everything sharp and searching before locking onto Victoria's shaken expression. "Are you okay?" His deep voice held something else beneath it, something that sounded almost like fear. Victoria couldn't answer immediately. She swallowed hard, pulse racing. Owen stepped closer. "Victoria, tell me." She pointed toward the bathroom. Something in his eyes darkened instantly, not surprise, but the kind of dread men only feel when something they've long anticipated finally arrives. "Someone was in there," Victoria said, her voice rough, unsteady. "They left a symbol." Owen didn't ask what symbol. He didn't ask where. He simply said, "Show me." Victoria led him to the bathroom door. Owen stood before the mirror, eyes narrowing at the mark drawn on the fogged surface. A faint crease appeared between his brows, a rare fracture in his usual composure. "You know what it is?" Victoria whispered. Owen lifted his hand toward the symbol, but didn't touch it as if he were trying to sense something beyond the surface. Then he spoke. "This is the mark of your family." "The Winterfields." Victoria's voice wavered. Owen nodded slightly. "Winterfield blood never leaves this symbol without meaning." "You're saying someone from my family found me?" Her breath grew heavier. Owen didn't answer. And that silence said more than any explanation could. "But who?" Her voice softened to a tremor. "My father disappeared. My mother cut off every tie. I don't know who's still alive." Owen turned to face her. His eyes were dark deep, and tinged with something that looked devastatingly like guilt. "They didn't come here for you." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "They came here. For me." The words cut through Victoria like a blade. "For you," she echoed, stunned. Owen took a step closer, the space between them collapsing, until cold and warmth pressed together. The Winterfields and the Parkers were once allies. Owen began, voice sinking low, like a confession he had kept locked away for years. "Until something happened 20 years ago, something that made your father disappear, and made me lose the one thing that mattered most." "What did you lose?" A flicker of pain lit in his eyes, sharp, hidden, but unmistakably real, like a wound reopening. "The trust of the man I once called a brother." Victoria froze. "You're talking about my father." Owen didn't nod, but he didn't deny it either. Adam Winterfield was the man I respected most. Owen continued. He saved me from an ambush when I was 23. He taught me not just how to survive, but how to see the world. His voice tightened for a fraction of a second, brief, but Victoria heard it. But because of a secret, he turned away. From his family, and from me. Victoria looked at him. For the first time, she saw something she'd never associated with Owen Parker Payne. Real pain. And somehow it was connected to her family. Why did he leave? Victoria asked softly. Owen held her gaze because he knew something no one else was meant to know. What was it? Owen inhaled deeply. The name of the person who destroyed the Winterfield family. Victoria felt the air vanish from her lungs. My family was killed. Not all, Owen answered, but enough. And your father carried the secret of who was behind it. Victoria's hands turned cold. And you knew he was hiding something, she whispered, searching for an anchor in the chaos. Owen closed his eyes for a brief moment, and when he opened them again, they held the shadow of a darkness caged for far too long. I knew the first half, he said quietly. And that is why your father ran. Because he feared that if I learned the rest, I would no longer be the man he trusted. Victoria felt something heavy drop inside her chest. So the person who left that symbol could be a Winterfield, Owen said. Or someone pretending to be one, trying to take you away from here. Why would they want to take me? Owen looked at her for a long time. A very long time. As if standing at the edge of two truths, one he could say and one he wanted desperately to shield her from. Finally, he said slowly, because your bloodline means more than you realize, and because someone wants that bloodline returned to them. Victoria shook her head fiercely. I don't belong to anyone. Owen gave a faint, sorrowful smile, the kind that looked like an old wound reopening. You belong to yourself, he said. But these people don't believe that. Before Victoria could respond, a sharp alarm chirped from the device on Owen's wrist. He straightened instantly. Someone breached the northern gate, Marcus reported from outside. Victoria flinched. Is it the person who left the symbol? She asked. No, Owen said, firm and cold. This is someone else. Someone else. What does that mean? Owen's eyes cut toward her suddenly razor sharp, a look that made her blood turn cold. You need to listen to me very carefully, Victoria. She swallowed hard. There are 3 forces coming for you, Owen said slowly. 1 is the Maranzano family. 2 is someone from Winterfield or someone using their name. And the 3rd? He leaned in his breath, brushing hers. Is your father's old enemy. A tremor ran through her entire body. He had enemies of his own. Owen nodded once, and unlike the others, he stepped closer, voice dropping into a dark warning whisper. The 3rd one is not here to take you. Victoria's heart thrashed painfully. Then what do they want? Owen looked straight into her eyes. Only one thing he said, to see you dead. The moment Owen uttered the words, wants you dead, something inside Victoria froze solid, as if the vast, warm, luxurious room suddenly became too small to contain the terror of that truth. She couldn't breathe, couldn't react, couldn't understand why someone who didn't even know her would want her gone from the world. Are you sure? Victoria asked, her voice a scraped whisper caught in her throat. Owen did not look away from her. I don't say what I'm not certain of. The reply was gentle but forged from steel. It cracked the thin layer of denial she had tried to cling to, exposing something darker beneath. Who is he? She whispered. Owen stood still. He looked at her for 1 second. 2. 3 long enough that Victoria had to grip the edge of the table to stop herself from swaying. Then he answered Lorenzo Hale. The name meant nothing to her yet. The way Owen spoke, it made it feel like a curse. Who is he? Victoria pressed. Owen walked toward the window and parted the curtain slightly. The cold light reflected off the snow, casting a silver sheen over his face, a dangerous, unwavering beauty carved from ice. Hale was once the keeper of the underworld's black ledger, Owen said. The man who held secrets no one else was allowed to know. The man, your father, betrayed first. Victoria's breath caught. My father betrayed him. Betrayed? Owen repeated quietly or simply learned too much. Either way, Hale does not forgive. Victoria went still. Each word struck her mind like a stone dropped onto water. Hale. Her father's enemy. And now, her enemy. But why would he want me dead? Victoria asked, her fear finally pushing her to the edge. Because your father carried a secret that only you can unlock. Owen answered. What secret? Owen stepped toward her again. What your father carried was something that changed the balance of power. Big enough to bring down the 3 strongest families in New England if it fell into the wrong hands. Victoria swallowed. You're saying I'm the key Hale needs? Owen nodded once. And if he can't unlock it... He paused. He'll make sure the key never exists at all. Victoria gripped the edge of the bed. Her legs trembled weak as water. She whispered, When? Did you know all this? Owen drew a slow breath, fists tightening at his sides. Longer than you think. A chill ran down her spine. You mean you knew I was alive? I've known about you since you turned 11. Victoria's world tilted. You, what? Owen moved closer, his eyes steady, carrying a truth she couldn't outrun. Your father sent me a letter. His last letter. Victoria's eyes widened. Owen. Her voice cracked into something fragile. He begged me to protect you, Owen said quietly. Even if he couldn't stay. Something burst inside Victoria's chest. Not pain exactly, but something like a cage opening after being locked for years. My father thought you were the only one who could keep me safe. Her voice trembled, yet she didn't look away. Owen's eyes were dark deep as the midnight sea. Not the only one, he said softly, but the last one he trusted. Victoria could no longer tell which emotion held her captive fear. Sadness, relief, or emptiness. All she knew was that her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. How long? Did you watch me? She asked. Long enough to know how you lived, Owen answered. His voice lowered a fraction. Long enough to know you're stronger than you think, and more alone than anyone should ever have to be. Victoria turned away. Those words alone tightened her throat. Truths that gentle were sometimes sharper than knives. But if you were watching me? Her tone was soft but piercing. Why didn't you come sooner? Owen went silent. Not an evasive silence, not a shameful silence, but a silence that sounded like an old wound demanding to be acknowledged. He stepped closer, close enough for her to hear his breath, close enough for his warmth to make the space between them tremble. He answered, Because I made a promise to your father. What promise? Her whisper trembled. Owen looked directly into her eyes, unguarded, solemn, painfully honest. That if I ever came to you, it would never be out of obligation. Victoria's heart skipped a beat. You. She backed away instinctively. What does that mean? Owen didn't follow her. But his eyes did, as if they had latched onto her heartbeat long before she ever understood what that meant. It means I had to be sure, Owen said softly, that when I stepped into your life, it wouldn't be because of your father or duty. Victoria felt her breath tremble. Then, because of what Owen tilted his head slightly, his eyes darkened not with danger this time, but with something softer, fiercer, and warm enough to set every nerve in her body alight. Because of you. He whispered it. The room seemed to absorb the sound, holding it between them. Victoria nearly stepped back again, but her legs refused to move. Not from fear, but from a tidal wave of emotion she couldn't name crashing through her so forcefully it left her breathless. I came to you, Owen said, because I wanted to, not because anyone asked. Her heart twisted violently, but before she could form a response, hurried footsteps echoed in the corridor. Marcus pushed open the door, voice urgent but controlled. Mr. Parker, he's inside the inner courtyard. Victoria spun around. He who? Marcus looked at her for a brief moment, as if weighing what she could handle. Then he answered Lorenzo Hale. Victoria's knees nearly gave out. "You mean the man who wants to kill me?" Marcus nodded, and for the first time fear flickered visibly in his eyes. Owen immediately grabbed Victoria's arm, pulling her against his chest. Not roughly, but with a force that allowed no refusal. "You do not leave my side." His voice was a blade. Victoria barely managed a breath before Owen turned to Marcus dismiss the secondary guard units. "Only the primary team stays." "Yes, sir." Victoria gasped Owen. "What is happening?" Owen lowered his head, his dark eyes meeting hers from mere inches away. "You're about to hear something you don't want to know," he said slowly. She swallowed. "Hale didn't only come to kill you." Victoria stood frozen. Owen leaned closer, his voice dropping into a shadowed whisper. "He came for what your father once stole from him." "Whoa, what did he steal?" Owen's gaze sharpened, cutting through the dimness like a blade. "Half of the Winterfield secret." Victoria felt her entire body tremble. But before she could speak, Owen continued, voice low, heavy with a pain he'd never admitted. "And the other half is right here." He placed his hand against her chest, right where her heart was thundering beneath his palm. Owen's hand rested so lightly on Victoria's chest, yet her whole body went numb. Not from fear, not from pain, but from the sudden realization that her heart, once steady through years of poverty and routine, was now beating hard, not because of the danger outside, but because of the man standing before her. Victoria stepped back instinctively. "I carry half of that secret." Her voice trembled like a thin thread, yet it wasn't weak. It held a deep confusion, as if the world she had known was crumbling piece by piece. Owen lowered his hand, but his gaze didn't release her. "Not literally," he said softly. "No one hides secrets in the heart of a living person. But your father believed only you could open the door he locked." Locked, where Victoria forced her breathing steady. Owen didn't answer immediately. He walked toward the window and lifted the curtain halfway. Outside, snow fell thicker now, covering the wide garden in absolute white. But within that peaceful scene were faint shadows of movement, the security team spreading across the grounds, fast and precise. "There's an archive," Owen said, "hidden beneath an old Winterfield chapel on the outskirts of Boston. Your father was the last person to open it, and the last to close it." Victoria blinked. "You mean the secret is inside that place, most of it," Owen replied. "But there's a lock. A final safeguard built to respond only to Winterfield blood." Victoria felt the air thin around her. "And I can unlock it," Owen turned back to her. His expression held something tight between truth and something he didn't want to admit. "You're the last of the Winterfield line," Owen said quietly. "You're the key everyone is looking for." She crossed her arms over her chest as if trying to keep her heart from falling apart. "But why me?" she whispered. "Why give something so dangerous to me? I'm not strong or powerful." Owen stepped closer. "You don't need power," he murmured, voice deep as earth. "Your blood is enough." Victoria clenched her fists. "I'm just a waitress. A normal girl." "I'm not. You were never normal." Owen cut in gently but sharply. Victoria lifted her head. In his dark eyes, she saw something like an invisible cord pulling them closer. "I watched you for years," Owen said, "and never once did I see you break even when life tried its hardest to crush you." "Owen, you have no idea how strong you are," he continued, voice low. "Your father saw it. And so do I." The words struck a place deep inside her she hadn't even realized she was hiding. Before she could grasp how they made her feel, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Voice urgent, "Mr. Parker. He's moving toward the backwoods. If he crosses that boundary, we'll lose him." Owen turned sharply, his face returning to the cold steel she had seen before. "Hale will not leave empty-handed," Marcus said. "We suspect he's trying to force Miss Reynolds outside." Victoria stiffened. Why would he think I'd go out there? Marcus glanced at her, then at Owen, seeking permission. Owen nodded once. Marcus said he left another symbol on the north wall. Something he wants you to see. Victoria's brows furrowed. Another symbol. Marcus hesitated. It's an object. A necklace, with your father's name engraved on it. Victoria went still. Her throat tightened painfully. No, she breathed. That's impossible. He wore that necklace every day, Owen said quietly, eyes locked on her. I recognized it immediately. Victoria's voice sharpened. But my father died. How could he possibly? Hale used to work under the Winterfield family, Owen said, voice cutting like ice. There's nothing he can't take. If he wants it. Victoria's hands trembled. So what does he want from me? Owen looked at her for a long moment, as if he were weighing each word carefully. He wants to break the lock, and if he can't convince you to open that archive, he'll remove the only person capable of doing it. Victoria stumbled back until the edge of the bed caught her. No, she whispered. I'm not something people can fight over. Owen stepped toward her, and for the first time since she had met him, he wasn't hiding anything. No masks, no armor, no calculated restraint. Just Owen. All concern, all raw intensity so real it made her breath catch. Victoria, he said slowly, I need you to understand something. She looked up. Whether you accept your bloodline or not, they will still chase you. Why, she choked. I'm nobody. Owen leaned in slightly close enough that his forehead almost brushed hers. Not to them, he murmured. To them, you're the last heir of a fallen dynasty. Victoria inhaled sharply. And to me, Owen whispered, you're someone I will not allow anyone to harm. Her breath faltered, not because of the words, but because of the way he said them, and the way his fingers lifted her chin lightly, as if even a firmer touch would shatter her. But the moment lasted only a few heartbeats. Marcus appeared again. Mr. Parker Hale is retreating. But he left a message. Victoria turned instantly. What message? Marcus looked briefly to Owen for permission. Owen nodded, though his eyes had darkened. Marcus said, he wants to meet Miss Reynolds at 4 p.m. today. Alone. Victoria stumbled back. Alone? No. Absolutely not. Owen stepped beside her, placing a hand near her waist, a silent wall of protection. You're not going, he said, voice steady and cold as forged steel. He wants to drag you out of my territory. I won't let that happen. Victoria looked up at him, and a piece of her fear loosened, simply because he was close, strong, unwavering, a force the storm outside couldn't shake. But if I don't go, what will he do? Her voice quivered. Owen answered without hesitation. Hale will attack, and I will end this before he ever gets near you. Victoria gripped the hem of her sweater. But he has my father's necklace. Owen took her wrist, gently grounding her. Victoria, he murmured, the secret you carry isn't in the object he holds. It's in your blood. And I will protect that blood, with everything I have. She looked into his eyes. There was no arrogance of a Mafia king there. No cold distance of a man ruling shadows. Only truth. Pure, painful, terrifying truth. And for the first time, Victoria didn't run from the emotion rising inside her. So what do we do now? She whispered. Owen took her hand not tightly, but like an unspoken vow. We go to the old Winterfield chapel, he said. Tonight. Victoria's eyes widened. Tonight, yes. His voice was deep, steady, like a drumbeat in the dark. Because Hale is already coming. Owen leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. And because your father's secret is waking up. Night fell over New England like a thick curtain swallowing every trace of light. Snow drifted silently, each flake tapping against the armored SUV's windows before melting into thin streaks of water. Victoria sat in the back seat, fingers gripping the seatbelt so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her palms were damp with cold sweat. Just hours ago, she had been in the warm comfort of Owen's mansion, and now she was driving toward a place that had once belonged to her bloodline, a place she had never known, yet somehow felt known by. Owen sat beside her, his hand gently laced with hers, not possessive, not forceful, just solid enough to keep her anchored. Everything will be all right. His voice was low-deep, like a soft ember glowing in the dark. Victoria turned her head toward him. Are you sure Owen didn't answer with an immediate yes? Instead, he tightened his grip around her hand. I'm sure of one thing, he said quietly. I won't let anyone lay a hand on you. Her chest tightened more from his words than from the fear of what lay ahead. In the front seat, Marcus spoke into the radio. Perimeter around the chapel still looks quiet, Marcus reported. But I don't trust that quiet. Nothing is ever quiet when Hale is around, Owen replied, voice turning cold. Victoria shivered. The Winterfield Chapel. When the SUV turned onto an old stone path, Victoria saw a tower rising through the falling snow, tall, hollow, and scarred like a wound carved into history. The chapel stood isolated in a pocket of dark forest. Its roof washed out to a dull gray, an angel statue with broken wings guarding the heavy wooden doors. This wasn't a sanctuary. It felt like a warning. This was where my family kept documents, Victoria whispered. Owen shook his head. Not just documents. The Winterfields were the only family in New England with power on both sides of the law. They stored things no one could ever be allowed to uncover. And the final secret is beneath this place. Owen looked at her deeply. The last piece, yes. Marcus opened the door. Clear. Victoria stepped into the snow. Her boots sank slightly. Cold air bit at her skin, but her mind was too strained to fully register it. She stared up at the chapel, and for a moment she felt as though the dark windows were staring back. Are you scared? Owen asked gently, stepping beside her. Victoria answered honestly, I don't know what scares me more. The secret under there, or the person I'll become after knowing it? Owen tilted his head slightly as if he wanted to touch her cheek, but stopped himself. Who you become, he said softly, won't be defined by any family. I'll stand with you no matter what. Her chest trembled. She didn't respond, but the small cloud of breath forming between them felt like an unspoken answer. Marcus interrupted the moment. We should go in. Inside the chapel, the heavy wooden doors groaned open, echoing through the vast cold space. The air smelled of damp wood, old incense, and ash. Their footsteps echoed across the stone floor. Victoria looked up at the dusty, stained glass windows, the broken pews, and the massive stone altar at the front. My father came here, she whispered. Owen nodded. Many times. Victoria brushed her hand along a cracked pew. Maybe I sat here once, when I was little. Owen stepped behind her, close enough that she felt his warmth. You might not remember it, he murmured, but this place remembers you. She turned, his eyes were deep enough to pull breath from her lungs. Marcus cleared his throat, deliberately breaking the intensity. Let's keep moving. The entrance to the vault is behind the altar. But... He frowned. Someone's been here. Recently. Victoria's pulse spiked. Hale. Possibly, Marcus said. Fresh tracks. Owen approached the altar, knelt, and pressed his hand against a slab of stone. A soft click echoed. Part of the floor slid aside, revealing a pitch-black passage. Down here, Owen said. To the vault. Victoria swallowed hard. Descending into the vault, the spiraling stone steps sank deep into the earth. With every step down, Victoria felt her heart beating faster. The air grew colder, heavier, and carried a faint smell of metal and time-worn parchment. At the bottom, she saw massive metallic doors, carved with the Winterfield emblem, a circle slashed by 2 lines identical to the symbol smeared on her bathroom mirror. Her breath hitched. Owen! She stepped back. He immediately placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. No one can open this but you, he said quietly. But I don't even know how. Owen traced a narrow groove carved into the surface. The Winterfields believed in blood recognition, he murmured. 1 drop from you, and the lock will respond. Victoria froze. A drop. Of blood, Marcus stepped forward. You won't have to sacrifice anything, just 1 drop to confirm lineage. Victoria looked at Owen. Are you sure this isn't a trap? His face softened just barely, as if her question touched something deep. If it is, he lifted her hand gently. Then I'll be the one to fall into it first. Not you. A tight ache spread across her chest. Warm and painful. Owen took a small blade. Just a tiny cut, he murmured. If you want. If you don't, we leave right now. Victoria looked at the cold metal door, at the symbol carved into it, at something her father had hidden so deeply the world turned to hunt her for it. She realized she couldn't run forever. She nodded. Owen held her finger as if even air touching her would hurt. The blade kissed her skin a tiny line. One drop of blood slid down and touched the groove. The vault trembled. Not softly, but violently, as if the earth itself were opening its jaws. Victoria clutched Owen's arm. He immediately drew her close. Blue light crawled through the engraved lines, glowing like veins awakening after decades of sleep. Then, boom! The doors split open. A wave of cold air swept out, carrying the smell of old paper, old metal, and something like time sealed away too long. Victoria stared into the darkness beyond. But it wasn't the shadows that froze her. It was the object at the center of the chamber. A hexagonal metal box engraved with a name, Victoria Hale Winterfield. Her heart stopped. They knew me. Her voice broke. Before I even knew who I was, Owen stepped closer, though he didn't touch the box. Maybe this secret wasn't something your father kept for you, he said. Voice a dark whisper. Maybe the secret is you. Victoria trembled. This is a mistake. I was born in New York. I never, Victoria. Owen placed a hand on her back, pulling her close in case she collapsed. There's something you need to be ready for. Footsteps echoed from the stairway. Fast, sharp, striking the stone like knives. Marcus spun around instantly. No, this is impossible. His voice cracked. Owen pulled Victoria behind him, his eyes turning pitch black. At the top of the steps, a silhouette appeared. Slow, measured. A long black coat brushing the ground. Eyes dark and sharp as a blade. He smiled. We meet again, Victoria. Victoria's fingers dug into Owen's arm as her heart nearly stopped. Not because the man had found them, but because his face was identical to her father's in the final photograph. Silence swallowed the underground vault so completely that Victoria could hear her own heartbeat. Frantic, uneven pounding so hard, it felt like it might burst through her ribs. Owen stood in front of her, shielding her entirely, his body coiled tight like a bowstring pulled to its limit. Marcus reached behind his coat fingers, curling around the gun strapped to his back. Yet all of that, the defensive stance, the tension, the danger, vanished the moment Victoria saw the man at the bottom of the stairs. A face she thought she had buried with her memories. A face so painfully identical to the father in her last photograph. No, that's impossible. Victoria staggered backward, stomach plunging. The man smiled a thin, sharp smile, nothing like the vague warmth she once imagined from childhood fantasies. That smile was a blade sharpened to perfection. I suppose I confused you, Victoria, he said softly. His voice was deep smooth, but carried a second undertone like a serpent sliding beneath the surface. Owen lowered his center of gravity, blocking Victoria from the man's line of sight. Lorenzo Hale. Owen said, voice cold enough to frost steel. I thought you'd pick a different night to kill yourself. Lorenzo laughed. Drop the overprotective tone, Owen. I didn't come here to fight, not yet anyway. Marcus fired. The gunshot exploded through the vault, ricocheting off stone walls, making the ground tremble. The bullet grazed Lorenzo's coat, but he didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He didn't even blink. He simply stood there, as if Marcus had fired at a ghost. Marcus Owen growled. Stand down. I won't stand down, Marcus hissed. He's the one who, Marcus. Owen's voice dropped to a level so cold it froze the air. Marcus stopped instantly. Lorenzo stepped down one more stair, eyes locked on Victoria behind Owen's shoulder. You're not, Victoria whispered, breath trembling. You're not my father. He tilted his head, smile deepening. No, Victoria. I'm not your father. Then his voice slid lower, cutting like a razor. I'm his twin brother. The entire vault fell into a vacuum of stillness. Even the snowfall outside seemed to halt. Victoria froze. It felt like the ground beneath her turned to sand, collapsing inch by inch. Twin? Brother, she whispered as if her own mouth doubted the words. Yes. Lorenzo adjusted his collar. His twin, Hale Winterfield of the 8th generation, the half erased from our lineage because the family chose the better son to inherit. The last line dripped with venom. Owen stayed in front of her, but Victoria sensed the tension in his shoulders, as if he had known part of this, yet never wanted it to be true. Lorenzo descended further voice, turning into something dangerously coaxing. Victoria, my niece, you have no idea, do you? His smile grew. The blood in your veins belongs to both of us. You are heir to William Winterfield. And to me. Victoria clutched the back of Owen's coat, the instinct to flee tightening around her. Stop talking to her, Owen, said, voice a razor's edge. Lorenzo flicked his eyes toward him. If I recall correctly, the Parker family has no authority over Winterfield blood. You forfeited your name the day you stole the secret, Owen snapped. The mockery in Lorenzo's expression vanished. For a heartbeat, he became someone else, darker, sharper. That secret was mine by right, he spat. My father, her grandfather, chose the wrong son. William should have been the first to die. Victoria's breath hitched. My grandfather died in an accident. Her voice wavered. Lorenzo laughed. An accident. In this family, he leaned forward, voice slicing the air. A man like him never accidents. His death was a decision. Victoria shook her head violently. I don't believe you. You will, Lorenzo said. When you open the box. Victoria's gaze shot to the metal box in the vault, the one etched with her name. Her fingers trembled. You're not opening it, Owen said, gripping her shoulder. This place isn't safe. Lorenzo smirked. Ah, afraid she'll learn the truth about her blood, or afraid she'll learn the truth about you. Owen didn't move, but Victoria felt the subtle tension ripple through him. What do you mean, Victoria asked. Lorenzo raised a brow. Sweet girl, I advise you not to ask him that. He'd prefer to keep you close in his own way. Victoria felt her pulse jump. She glanced at Owen, searching for answers, but his face was stone. Fine, Lorenzo sighed dramatically. I'll say it. He looked at Victoria. Did you know Owen once fought for the Parker throne? I know, Victoria said. He's the head now. No, Lorenzo said slowly. He became the head after his brother died. The vault froze. Owen stepped forward, instantly blocking her from Lorenzo completely. Don't drag her into that, Owen said, voice dropping to a dark growl. Victoria clutched his coat. Owen, what is he talking about? Not now, Owen said quickly. But Lorenzo's smile returned, sinister, triumphant. Why not now? How long did you plan to hide it, Owen? 6 years. 8. Lorenzo. Owen's voice was more warning than sound. All right then, Lorenzo said lightly. I'll tell her, the Parker heir before Owen. His brother didn't die on some mission. He lifted a finger toward Owen. He died while trying to save your father from me. Victoria's knees buckled. He's lying, Owen said sharply, catching her. You don't need to listen, Marcus snapped. Stop, Hale. But Lorenzo ignored them both. He descended the last step now, only feet away. Then he spoke slow, crisp, leaving no escape. Your father didn't die of heart failure, Victoria. Victoria's breath fractured. He died because Owen brought him onto Parker territory, where no one could protect him from me. Victoria wavered. Stop! Owen held her tight. Lorenzo smiled like a knife. He never told you why, because he carries a debt to your father. A debt paid with his brother's life. Victoria's breath broke into a soft gasp. Her heart felt like it was tearing apart. Owen turned to her desperation, finally breaking through his control. Victoria, listen to me. She shook her head, tears brimming but not falling. You took my father to the place where he died. Her voice was raw, cracking. It's not like that. Owen stepped forward. I tried to save him, but he died. Her voice snapped. Because of me, Owen said quietly. Because I was too late. Silence collapsed over the vault. Victoria looked into his eyes, and she saw something she had never imagined Owen Parker capable of regret. Pain, a grief that had carved itself into his bones. Her veins turned to ice. Lorenzo smirked victorious. There, let her see you as you are, Parker. Owen drew a long breath, shoulders' stiff voice weighed with stone. I didn't kill your father, Victoria, but I brought him into the crossfire. I failed him, and His voice faltered. I've carried that failure for 6 years. Victoria's breath shattered. She turned away as if looking at Owen hurt more than facing the man who wanted her dead. Lorenzo spread his arms triumphant. Now. It's time to open the box, my dear. Victoria wiped her tears, then turned back and her eyes had changed. No panic, no trembling. Something older, something Winterfield had awakened. I'll open it, she said slowly. But not for you. Lorenzo narrowed his eyes. For whom then? Victoria turned to Owen. And despite the tears still shining in her lashes, her voice didn't waver. For myself, she said. To know the truth. The air inside the secret vault felt frozen in place as Victoria stepped toward the metal box engraved with her name. The stone walls were cold, the air thick with the scent of time, and behind her stood 2 men who shared the same bloodline, yet stood on opposite sides like light and shadow. Owen stood on her right, breath heavy, his dark eyes never leaving her for even a second. Lorenzo stood on her left, wearing a thin glacial smile like a knife reflecting the false moonlight of the underground chamber. All that remained was for her to touch the box. Victoria inhaled deeply. She rested the back of her hand on the lid, icy as death-forged metal. Victoria Owen said, his voice hoarse as if scraped across stone. You don't have to... No, she interrupted softly. I need to. No one else can do this for me. Their eyes met. In that moment, Victoria understood this with painful clarity, although her heart felt like it had shattered from the truth of her father's death. Owen was still there, not protecting her with excuses or lies, but by standing firm, accepting every wounded look she could give him. Silent endurance. A love unspoken. She knew. She felt it. Lorenzo stepped forward half a pace. My niece. Open it and all will be clear. I have waited for this moment far too long. Step back. Victoria's voice was calm, but carried a force that made even Lorenzo freeze. Something ancient stirred inside her Winterfield blood, but not the kind he expected. Victoria placed both hands on the lid. The box trembled like the past knocking from beneath its coffin. Click. The lid snapped open. A cold breath escaped from within, carrying the scent of old paper-sealed wax and the final echo of someone long gone. Inside was not gold, not money, not weapons, but a brown leather journal, a wax-sealed envelope, and a small metal drive engraved with the Winterfield crest. Victoria lifted the journal. Her breath caught at the name etched on the first page. William Winterfield. Her heart clenched. Her father had written this. Owen approached but stopped close enough for her to feel his presence, still letting her choose freely. Victoria opened the first page, the handwriting she recognized instantly. Her father had written her childhood birthday cards with this same penmanship. If you're reading this, it means I am gone, and the secret I carried has reached the hands it was meant for. Victoria gripped the journal so tightly her knuckles turned pale. No, she whispered. Dad. Owen bowed his head as if looking away was the last respect he could offer William. Lorenzo chuckled lightly. Good, keep reading. You'll see your father wasn't the saint you imagined. Victoria turned the page. The handwriting grew shaky, rushed, fearful, hunted. I left the family when I learned something Lorenzo cannot inherit power. He wants to turn Winterfield into a weapon to destroy everyone who ever betrayed him. He killed my father, your grandfather. Victoria's body crumpled. Her knees buckled, and Owen caught her instantly, his arms strong and warm around her trembling shoulders. Still, she kept reading. When I escaped, I took evidence of Lorenzo's crimes. I knew he would chase me until my last breath. But I wasn't afraid. The only thing I feared was him finding you. A tear dropped onto the page. Owen's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle, steady grounding. Victoria flipped to the final pages, the writing now barely legible. Owen, if you are reading this. Victoria felt her heart stop. Protect her, not out of duty, but because you know she deserves to live. Owen shut his eyes, swallowing pain he had carried for years. She continued, I did not die of heart disease. I died returning to America to give this key to Owen. He was the only one I trusted to guard it. Victoria. I love you. Do not blame Owen for things beyond his control. The last line stood alone, trembling like the last breath of a dying man. Live, my daughter. Victoria collapsed, and Owen caught her fully this time, pulling her against him as if she were something fragile and precious. Lorenzo strode forward, eyes flashing with a murderous gleam. So the old man did leave evidence. His voice cracked with rage. The drive, give it to me! Owen spun around, pulling Victoria protectively against him. Step back. Marcus raised his gun, aiming straight at Lorenzo. Another inch, and you're dead. Lorenzo stared at all three, breath heaving like a predator cornered. Fine. He stepped back, though his smile twisted into something unhinged. But this isn't over. He pulled a black flare from his coat and slammed it against the ground. A blast of thick smoke erupted. Marcus shouted, Cover Victoria! Owen wrapped his body around her, shielding her completely as the chamber filled with choking smoke. By the time it cleared, Lorenzo was gone. Victoria trembled, clutching the journal tight against her heart. Owen cupped her face with both hands, his voice rough, aching. I'm sorry. His chest rose and fell sharply. I couldn't save your father. But I swear I'll save you, even if it costs me everything. Victoria looked up, eyes shimmering with tears, but the pain was no longer directed at him. It was understanding, acceptance, and something soft rising from the chaos. She placed her hand over his. My father didn't want me to blame you. He trusted you, so I will too. Owen closed his eyes, exhaling shakily, as if something inside him finally broke free. Victoria! His voice almost cracked. Between the cold stone and fading smoke, they stared at each other as if the world had narrowed down to just two souls. Then Victoria whispered, We finish what my father started. Owen nodded, eyes sharpening resolute. We'll bring Lorenzo down, and I swear, you will never have to run again. Victoria leaned into him, her heartbeat aligned with his steady and whole. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like darkness. Because he was there. Because the truth was finally theirs. Because hope, fragile glowing, lived again. She closed her eyes and whispered, Together. Owen lowered his head, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Not a claim, not a conquest, but a vow, a reverence. A love carried too long in silence, finally allowed to breathe. Hand in hand, they left the vault, carrying the truth, the secret, and each other. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel and share your thoughts below. Every comment is a spark that helps future stories come alive and reach more hearts.